Is it possible that there is another trump card that Luffy has at his disposal? That in the future, come the finale of the series, EOS Luffy, whether it's going to be a final fight against Blackbeard, Emu, Rocks D. Sebek, as some folks theorize, whoever's going to be, Monkey D. Luffy will have another crazy ability at his disposal to utilize against that person in the final war of One Piece, EOS One Piece. I think there's a case that yes, this could be legit. This could be legitimate. Yes, sir! And I've said before, obviously, that Luffy's trump card was the Congress haki stuff, and now we're seeing it come to full bloom, where a select few powerful folks can actually imbue their attacks with Conqueror's haki. Roger and Whitebeard did it in the flashback. Oden did it against Kaido in the flashback to get the permanent scar. Kaido has done it in real time, as well as Luffy, as well as Big Mom, potentially Zoro as well, potentially Yamato as well. This is the thing that I thought was the case, and lo and behold, it wound up being the case, and we're seeing it come to full prominence. However, there is something else to talk about as well for Luffy, because Luffy is doing something that not even Goldie Roger, the person I would say at this point in time is the strongest person in One Piece history, probably. Not even him could do this. And I think in the grand scheme of things, this is going along the path that I say a lot of times that Don Chinjao stated. Surpassing the Admirals, surpassing the Yonko, surpassing the Pirate King himself. In chapter 1014, Momonosuke hears something via the voice of all things, and his head is hurting him. What's his pain? Who is his voice? And we find out in the chapter 1015 that Luffy was talking to Momonosuke while he was underwater, seemingly telepathically. And to the point where John Bart and the rest of the Lost crew in the submarine, folks that we can safely assume, very safely assume, donned the voice of all things. If they did, Lost crew is actually unironically low-key broken. Then again, some folks do say that Beppo is the Zoro of Lost Crew. I mean,
really makes you think.
Oh, fair enough. Maybe he's that nice. Have my doubts on that one, definitely do. But hey, we'll have to wait and see how the future plays out. We see how Luffy, probably with the voice of all things, it could be a whole new thing. But let's just say for the time being, it is the voice of all things. With the voice of all things, Luffy is seemingly, once again, talking telepathically to Momonosuke, and people in the air can actually hear his voice underwater. What he's doing, in more ways than one, is akin to what the Sea Kings did way back when Luffy heard him speak, of course, and also when Roger and Oden heard them speak in the flashback. The Sea Kings can talk to each other seemingly telepathically. But Roger could also sense the poneglyph on Skypiea in the Oden flashback. We knew about that the first time when we really talked about the voice of all things, when Luffy and the crew were talking to him and Shaki during the Shibuya Archipelago arc. And we saw it actually happen in that flashback. And he knew that the poneglyph of Skypiea was referring to a great power. And then Oden, who couldn't sense it, read out to him. Going back to Skypiea, at no point in time, as far as I can tell, did Luffy ever sense the poneglyph? At no point in time. Luffy, at this point in time, has not shown the ability of Roger to actually, with the voice of all things, hear the voice of inanimate objects, whereas Roger could. Even something unique as the poneglyphs, which seemingly exude their own presence, even more so than other objects, Roger could hear their voice, but not Luffy in the entire Skypiea. But Roger himself has actually never shown the ability to communicate telepathically, like what Luffy could do with Momonosuke. Not one time has Roger shown this. And mind you, there's only very little that we know of Roger so far. Very, very little. But that is something, regardless, that Roger at this point in time has not shown, but Luffy has shown. And this could be explained by one of Luffy's innate haki characteristics. So we're going to overlap here, but because Oda himself hasn't really fully explained this, which does give him a lot of wiggle room, honestly, when it comes to new things happen for haki, or the voice of all things, but in a general power structure system, it's a relatively bad thing. Keep it in a buck. But that being said, let's overlap the concept that I really mentioned about Luffy's observation haki to Luffy's voice of all things. In chapter 894, during the flashback that Luffy had against Katakuri, Rayleigh explains how Luffy seems to be attuned naturally to the emotions of living things. Of course, probably unconscious, subconsciously, obviously, but Luffy's innate disposition for his observation haki is to be in tune with living things more emotionally. This could explain easily a host of things that happen in the pre-time skip that could have been observation haki related. Like, for example, Luffy being able to sense the real Mr. 3 in Little Garden among the Mr. 3 clones. So, if we apply that concept to Luffy's voice of all things, this could explain why Roger can sense something like a poneglyph and its voice, but Luffy couldn't. And also, because Roger was in part a swordsman, you can argue that Roger was aware or may have had some inkling of the breath of all things, like what we see with Zoro. And if he did, that would in part probably strengthen his affinity towards inanimate objects rather than living things, rather than Luffy, who would be more in sync with living things. Luffy can talk telepathically like the Sea Kings to Momonosuke, but Roger hasn't shown that at this point in time. And so based on that, knowing how Luffy and Momonosuke reacted when Zunisha was emitting its voice, and how they were holding their heads and holding their ears in great pain, and Momonosuke was feeling the same way when Luffy was doing that, but then also knowing that other folks, random folks, like Lost Crew, can hear his voice too. What if we add another stipulation to Luffy's voice of all things, and we add the same concept of Conqueror's haki to his voice of all things? Whether you're born with it or not, whether you can get it later on, if you're not born with it, doesn't matter. But if you get it, you can train it. What if Luffy can actually train his voice of all things to where even people that don't have the voice of all things can hear in their minds Luffy's booming voice, his presence, that can actually give them excruciating mental pain? Basically, mental attacks on some straight Yu-Gi-Moto action.
I don't think so. Mind crush!
For real, not even joke with you. That sounds a bit crazy, but look what Luffy's doing. Look at how Momonosuke and Luffy were reacting to Zunisha's voice, and then look at how Momonosuke was reacting to Luffy's voice when he was underwater. And then knowing that other folks could hear Luffy speak too, telepathically, in a weird way. There could be a case here where you can actually train the voice of all things. Now, keep this in mind. Roger hasn't shown it, but Roger, when we do see him do it in the flashback, Roger was in his late 40s, early 50s, around then, the flashback. Luffy's 19 years old at this point in time. Even though he does grow at an exponential rate, there could be the case here where, because he was older, Roger had more experience and versatility with the voice of all things, which could explain why Luffy hasn't been able to hear any inanimate objects just yet. It's more so he needs more time, he needs more development to understand the voice of all things ability. Because by that time with Roger, he was on his second voyage in Skypiea. Now, whether or not he can actually train it or not, like legitimately train it, I think is a whole, it's a bit shaky. But if Luffy is doing things earnestly so that Goldie Roger couldn't do, then this could also apply to actually training something of that caliber, which would be the final ultimate trump card that Luffy could have at his disposal. Mental attacks via the voice of all things. So it's a bit crazy, obviously. It's a bit crazy.
Boy, have you lost your mind, because I'll help you find it.
But when you consider we're seeing a lot of folks at this point in time imbue their attacks with Conqueror's haki. We're seeing it again with Luffy, maybe Zoro, maybe Yamato, we know Kaido, Big Mom, Roger, Whitebeard, I would argue Shanks, maybe Mihawk. There's a long list of cats, maybe Akainu. There's a list of cats that could have this. It wouldn't surprise me if Blackbeard could have this too. Granted, it'd be kind of crazy because he having two different powers and having that as well be nuts. But keeping it in a buck, he did know about Luffy's haki way back when in Impel Down, while Luffy not even knowing about that stuff which would imply that he was aware very fully of hockey and its usage, and there's a good chance, I think, that even someone like Blackbeard could have this power. Luffy may need another trump card on top of that, his final trump card, which could be something that only truly, like 3 or 4 people have, and only he could actually use it in that particular way, the voice of all things, for mental attacks. But again, that's a big stretch. Let me know, though, your stance on the subject matter at hand. I'm going to see y'all later. You guys and gals, take care and stay safe. Have a nice one.